Welcome to your awakening. Please take form as your reality is adjusted.
Still had it on mute. Sorry about that, folks. Yes, it's the usual kind of disorganized start, and I haven't even got my YouTube page open yet, so let me wait for that to open. Seems to be working, although it's not giving me any indication yet. Hopefully it's all working and it will catch up as I'm chattering, so I can just confirm that it's all going. Right, okay, now it's showing me the screen share. Way, so we can finish the screen share. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again. Greetings, salutations, well met, fellow hail. You made it again. You're back. Clicking through screens. Right, okay, now I can see the chat room again. Hello to everyone in the chat room. This might be a long one. I'll try and stick within the usual kind of timing, but it might be a long one in terms of me doing my kind of usual explanations of stuff, of what I'm talking about and what I'm thinking about, etc. But we'll see how we go. So be prepared. I might be unloading quite a lot of information in your direction. To a certain degree, I'm only going to use a certain amount of links to talk about what I want to talk about, but in totality, the amount of information is going to be quite a lot to get across. So, yeah, welcome back again to this Moon Day evening on the 3rd of the 2nd, 2020, the 3rd of February 2020, the year of vision. And after last week's episode, and I mentioned the prior episode, the 20th episode, was on a certain date that made it, seem a bit synchronistic. And then after last week's episode, after I mentioned that, I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Will next week's episode be on the 2nd of the 2nd of 2020? And it's episode 22. And I checked the calendar, and of course, it's one day over. So we're on the 3rd of the 2nd, 2020. But if you happen to notice, this particular episode is season 3, episode 22. So we do, even though it didn't land on the 2nd of the 2nd, the way I was originally thinking, it might be the 2nd of the 2nd. If anything, it's even more synchronistic because it's the 3rd of the 2nd of the 2nd. Missing one more 2. We need an extra 2 in there. But it just seems such a synchronistic combination of numbers of the calendars, the way the episodes have landed. It's just like, right, okay. And interestingly enough, as far as I'm concerned, this is just the way my mind works on this kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, the combination of other things going on out there in the world and on this internet environment all seem to have reached a confluence within the last week. And we've had various stuff going on. I was trying to explain it to the guys earlier. It was like ducks in a row, all coming together. All the ducks are swimming on the water. They're getting in line, and everything just went slunk, 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 and slotted into place as I was trying to wrap my head, comprehend, cognate some of the things that have been happening over the last week and prior weeks, because this has built up a little bit. And it will certainly go back several months when you bring in certain elements of the narrative distribution into this effect that I'm going to try and describe. For those of you that have been listening for a long time, have heard me talk about similar things before, to try and give a quick sort of summary synopsis that might be helpful for, if you've heard me talk about this kind of stuff before, or if you know about this kind of thing from elsewhere, from somebody else, or your own figuring out your own cognitive abilities. What I'm basically going to try and describe is how the system, I'm using just a ubiquitous label, the system utilizes media and people's emotional reactions and their fear-based mind control, which is implanted into all of us from a very early age, near enough straight from birth, you can argue. But how the media is used to create a narrative and string it along and play it out like a theatre play, such that it creates a justification for the governmental part of the system to enact the next part of their agendas, the next bit that they need done, either a piece of legislation or a social policy or attitude within the public, such that they get the herd go in the direction they want. So in a really reduced and simplified description, propaganda. That's what we're talking about, the use of propaganda via the media. But it's done at mainly a subtle and many times a subconscious layer, such that most of the public are unaware of this stuff. The majority of people are kept in a short-term thinking pattern, so that they stumble forwards half blind, trying to find their way through the fog of the chaos of the information that they're saturated in. Even more so now that people are so bound into their virtual life via the various technological gadgets and the illusionary element of life that they've been given in this virtual space. So, like I've said many times, people have more belief invested into their virtual selves than they have in their real world selves. Like constantly posting selfies of themselves. Their image in the internet environment is worth far more to them, and they invest far more energy of themselves into it than their real lives. Their everyday lives, as some people would say, but it's far more than that, really. But anyway, that's just to cut to the chase a little bit for some people if they haven't got the patience to listen all the way through, because I know I often talk at length because I feel a lot of these subjects require discussion at length. And even though I do my kind of monologue thing for probably an hour or so, we will talk about it as we get further into the show. So it's not just me preaching, but I will do some preaching this evening, because there's so much that is part of this subject matter. I'm going to have to move fairly quickly through certain sections. So I'm going to skip over parts that really require entire shows unto themselves, at least. So, I mentioned about the 2nd of the 2nd, 2020. It's the 3rd of the 2nd, 2020. Hello. Welcome to the amazing world of numbers, the numbers of the world. And what is the beast's number? Before we get into Christian stuff. So, the subtitle this evening, Dr. Whohan, fiddling Neo-Nero. I had to put the R in little brackets to try and make the point of how the Neo character, the archetype that is represented by that character in the movies, the Matrix trilogy, the way it's presented to the public, those concepts that are embodied into that archetypal icon that is presented to the public, the Neo, the One, the mythical hero, the Ubermensch, the Christ figure. So many archetypal roles are represented by that character in the stories, Neo. But at the same time, the propaganda, the manipulation, the narrative manipulation, the psychological manipulation that the system uses on the general populace utilizes that concept, that desire to be the one, to be Neo, to be important, to be famous, to feed the ego, to sustain the ego self, because so much of the mindset that is given to the general populace by the system is ego-based. So for the majority of the populace, they subconsciously comprehend ego death as being real death. So they are shit scared of the loss of that ego self, or even just the reduction of it. So they need to constantly reinflate it, to feed it, to sustain it in its bloated self that is given to them by the system, by the indoctrination of the system. So what I was trying to point out with that, using the Neo combination, is that they give you this false concept of your ego self is your real self, and therefore you should concentrate on energizing and fueling and feeding that ego self. The image in the virtual space, the way you dress, the way you present yourself to the world is all part of that ego-based element of the self. Ego's not a bad thing. Let me just, clarify that as a caveat to move forward. But the overinflation of the ego and the misaligned belief that the ego self is the totality of the self. So if the ego dies, oh, I'm dead, it's the end of my life. No, that is the insistence of the system that you have more belief in the illusion than you have in actual reality. Real reality. Going to overemphasize and belabor that, but you get the point, hopefully. So the Nero element is how they give people this concept, this cult-like mentality belief system that Neo, the one, is the thing you should be aspiring to, the inflation of the ego self. But by doing so, they are actually turning you into the Nero character who's fiddling while Rome is burning. Your world is falling apart. The social structure is falling apart. Everything's becoming chaotic and inverted and terrible. Oh, the doom. And there's you there believing in your illusionary self, the Nero self, fiddling away, going, oh, as long as I can still keep posting selfies of myself, who gives a fuck if the world burns? Doesn't matter if Rome burns down as long as I can keep fiddling. Can you hear the dance? You hear them dancing? So that's why part of the title this evening, to explain the Dr. Whohan element, is going to take the rest of the discussion. Hopefully that will make sense for some people of why the propaganda element, creating the Nero character fiddling while Rome burns, and they rebuild it into the new Rome, the new world order that they desire, the structure that they desire. It's not beneficial for the rest of us. It only serves their purposes. Yes, ubiquitous labels again, generalizations, get over it. If you want a list, a bullet point list of names of people that could be put into that category of they, those kind of lists are available online if you bother to look and search. Search for things like the black nobility or the bloodlines, things like that. You'll find the trail of information, and there is that information out there of names. I can mention a few like Orsini and De Beers and the Witten and the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Well, I think they're only usually listed as the Coburg-Gotha. I think that's the primary bloodline, but anyway, you get the point. There's that kind of information is out there, but to get my point across, I can happily use generalization, ubiquitous labels, talk about they and the system, etc. And call it oligarchy or kakistocracy or whatever you want. It's a bunch of people who think they know better than everybody else and have enough wealth and power to manipulate others such that they can try and build the Babylon that they desire, that is not necessarily beneficial to anyone else. So let's begin with a little screen share of a device that was announced the other day that just made me face palm and laugh out loud in desperation of, like, if people can't see this kind of reality that is hurtling towards them like a train wreck, then how else do you say it to them? But here we go, to screen share of my Firefox browser. And the first one to bring up, I'm not going to play any of this. I'm not going to play any of these video clips that I'm going to show to you, but I will put the YouTube link into the chat box on YouTube while I'm doing this. This was announced by Segway, you know, that company that makes the like little scooter devices, the little wheelie things that you roll around on. They've now brought out a version that's basically an armchair, a chair. You know, it works similar to their other device. It auto-corrects, it auto-balances using a gyro motor, electric motors inside it, etc. And you've got a little, like on an electric wheelchair, you've got a little steering joystick on the side so you can wheel yourself around in it. And I thought, this is exactly the chair featured in an animated movie from quite a few years ago called Wall-E, Wall-E, W-A-L-L-E, Wall-E. And in that movie, it's a global climate change movie, basically. It's a climate change propaganda movie. But all the people, all the humans in that movie are incapable of walking around on their own because they're big fat blobs that sit permanently in a chair like this that has a tray going across with a visual display, sort of touchscreen interaction device mounted on it. So basically, they never get out of their chair. They just roll around watching movies or chatting with their mates online or making YouTube content. Yeah, probably call something different to YouTube on that, but you get the point. And this was just announced at one of the latest tech shows. Yeah. So Segway, are they getting ahead of the curve of where a lot of this is going? Are they getting the public ready for this kind of environment of you're going to be incapable? All you are now is a visual media consumer. That's it. We've gone from even being a consumer of materialist products to now becoming a consumer of completely non-existent, virtual, phantom products. Feed your mind, the dormouse said, but, you know, choose what you're consuming. Don't just sit in front of a screen and let it project bad food into your mind, basically. You know, you have the choice of what you consume. Still, at the moment, largely. Yeah. It's not truly free will choice, but you got a fair amount of choice. But anyway, that's another subject. Moving on from that kind of environment of you just being a big blob in a chair. Oh, sorry, Scott, just pause your video for a sec. You being a fat blob in a chair where you can wheel around. Hopefully, you know, you'll still have that ability to manually drive it, because it could also include auto drive software. So, you know, you wouldn't even have any control over it. You'll just get a message sent to you. You need to be at such and such location, and the chair just takes you there. Yeah. Get out the chair, fat buddy. But moving on to, sorry, belly rumbling, moving on to furthering that environment. This was another one of the ducks coming into row, with those ducks on the water that I was talking about earlier. This is an article in the Mail Online that guy Scott Webb pointed out and did a little video on earlier today. And when I saw it come up, I thought, yes, that's spot on to what's going on at the moment. Right, thank you. So shout out to Scott Webb. But this article is talking about smart wallpaper that can boost Wi-Fi signal in your home by up to 10 times and allow for even smaller internet-connected devices developed by MIT researchers. So in other words, this is a movement towards the Internet of Things which will include you, your physical self. Your body is a unit within the Internet of Things. And they are already, or they have been for a while, but they're certainly building it up recently. They are working the propaganda to persuade people that the concept of having technology either attached to their body or actually in their body is moving at a pace. And this is part of it to lead towards that Internet of Things integration of everything, which includes you, your physical self, and your biometric data. As I mentioned last week, welcome to the biometric future. So you'll be in one of these wheelie chairs in an environment where every wall in this building will be coated in these kind of smart wallpaper, Wi-Fi boosting, signal boosting technology. Basically, that's the main thing about it, is that it boosts the signal so that the signal can carry further and stronger. So you are immersing yourself into a cauldron of EMF frequencies. You know, that again is one of those topics that deserves a whole show unto itself, and multiple shows really, to cover the connections into why that's not a good idea, why that's not a good thing for humanity, for people in general. The Wi-Fi that we have at the moment, the 4G and still in some places 3G, the mobile phone infrastructure, all of that is not good for us now. But as you know, as you're probably aware, the technology is being pushed further and further, and we are leading towards the full implementation of 5G. But I'll come back to that because this is an important element that adds into the whole discussion. So, bringing out wallpaper to encourage people to immerse themselves completely in a box of EMF smog. The concept of a Faraday cage can be useful to deflect outside frequencies. That's the point of it. You build a wire cage or mesh or just a shape that is then earthed to the ground. Proper earth connection is required, and that diffuses the electrical signals hitting it so that they don't get inside the cage. But this kind of technology is encouraging people to invert that concept of the Faraday cage. So instead of keeping the signals out, you're having more signals put into the box. Absolute saturation. Now, bringing this to the point of, pause this, to the point of what's been going on recently, the last couple of weeks, the development of the coronavirus pandemic as it is being portrayed by all the mainstream media, and a good portion of the so-called alternative media are also pushing that agenda that this is a pandemic, this is a virus outbreak that is spreading globally, etc., etc. Now, this is from a mainstream media news source. It's not the only one that's covered this kind of information, but I'm just making the point because so many people often complain that some of the stuff I talk about is, oh, where's your evidence for that? Where's your proof for that? Where's the scientific papers for that? There are scientific papers out there if you require that kind of materialistic proof. Yeah. And for many people, they won't accept something unless they see it on an official mainstream news source. And then often they'll attempt to invert that to debunk it, because their main concern is just to refute what you're saying, not to actually give it any cognitive credence such that they will examine whether it has any genuine validity or not. They just want to be able to deflect it so that they don't have to deal with it. So often they'll say something along the lines of, oh, you're quoting mainstream media. I thought you said mainstream media can't be trusted. Therefore, how can you quote it as a news source? And you just go round and round and round, argumentum ad infinitum, which is what a lot of cult mentality programming does to people. You see it in religions, you see it in abject statism, you see it in royalistic, what could I call them, adherents, people who are obsessed with the concept of royalty and worship them as if they are deities. They go round and round and round in this argumentum ad infinitum because really they don't want to give any consideration to, is there any validity in what is being said? It's just, I don't want to hear it because it destroys my illusion. So take it away, go away, deflect, deflect, deflect. So this is from a mainstream media report. I've seen other reports on independent sources that show drones being used in China to spray chemicals, supposedly sanitizing areas. But this is to make the point that the Internet of Things and the rollout of this level of technological saturation, smart cities, the control infrastructure to allow this to be possible is being gradually rolled out, rapidly rolled out now in the last year plus across the globe. You know, there's not many places that have true 5G coverage yet, but there are many places that are working towards it. But this was mainly to make the point about how this kind of surveillance state, dystopian technocracy environment is not something of fiction. It's not something of, oh, you're just crazy people online talking shit. You're schizophrenic, mate. You think fiction's real. Deflect, 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 deflect. This is a reality. Remember not so long ago, the images of Israel using grenade-firing drones on Palestinian protesters, as they called them. Now the Chinese are using chemical spraying drones to spray their own population, while at the same time manipulating the information that is released to the public so that they can try and portray the situation, try and spin it in a certain way that obviously, you know, for their purposes, for their benefits. So this is the kind of stuff I've been looking at over the week. I mean, the article that Scott talked about in his video was obviously just come up today, date on that, 3rd February. But it was an extra data point that added into my thought process as I was watching all this stuff unfolding over the week. And then last night, just to sort of bring the gander in with the goose, to really sort of amalgamate the way this propaganda narrative was playing out. I'll just drop that screen share for a minute. I said to the guys before we started, I really wish I'd mentioned this last Monday because it was in my mind then. And I considered saying it, but I thought I don't like making predictions. Not because I'm worried about being wrong. It's not that. Most of the time when I'm talking about future potentialities, I want to be wrong, because if I'm right, it's going to be something unpleasant. It's going to be something bad that's happening. So I'd rather be wrong. I'm just sort of pointing out potential dangers, as it were. Yeah? Like a meerkat looking for snakes and hawks. It's like, there's one over there, there's one over there. But I really wish I'd mentioned this last show. With the build-up of the coronavirus propaganda that had been going up until, talking about it last week, I thought, I bet the next episode of Doctor Who will have something in it to do with viruses, because the prior episode was about Wi-Fi. I think I mentioned that, that they're talking about Tesla and Wi-Fi technology and stuff like that. That's your Internet of Things connection, yeah? And they were trying to subtly misdirect misinformation deliberately to misdirect people into the concept that Tesla was talking about Wi-Fi, whereas really he wasn't. His device, Wardenclyffe Tower, was about transmitting energy for running your home, primarily. Yes, it could act as a carrier wave for information as well, so sort of like the internet on Wi-Fi. But really, his technology was about transmitting power, so we all had free energy. But Doctor Who spun the narrative as the BBC does. Remember, it's the prime show of the BBC. It is the vanguard of the BBC propaganda arm. And it's not just in the UK now, it is a globally broadcast show. So this is going out to the world, and it's highly popular in other countries, not just here in the UK. It's probably one of the top drama shows, supposedly fictional drama show, storytelling show in the world. And in one of the other episodes, they had a bit where there's this hidden character, and this outer space cops, the like rhino space cop people, will come and set up an electronic quarantine so that they can try and find this hidden guy who's almost like patient zero. And that occurred to me before. That was more like security state propaganda than it was viral content, virus connection, yeah. But over last week, as I watched the coronavirus propaganda build up, I thought, I bet there's going to be something on the next episode about viruses. Boom. This Sunday, I caught up with the episode 12. The 12 could be a significant part of this. But as I said earlier, I'm going to try and skip quickly through some stuff, because some things could be rabbit hole tunnels that open into very wide areas of other connections. Yeah, so I've got to just keep moving, basically. The number 12 could be significant. It's episode 12. But this latest episode, the primary concern, the primary element of the story is that there's some kind of virus infecting people that causes them basically to go pop, which is another level of the terror effect on a family audience, because please remember, Doctor Who is targeted at a family demographic. It's meant to be viewable by all ages of the family. Prime time viewing for toddlers as well as adults, supposedly. And they show a lot of quite terrifying elements. It's far beyond the cheesy cliche of kids in the 70s hiding behind the settee because the Daleks are attacking doctors. We're far beyond that level of simplistic threat implication. Yeah. The general status of the culture that we're all living in now is far beyond that level of, they show a really sort of simplistic robot saying exterminate, and people are frightened of that. Now they show quite terrifying things deliberately, because the level of tolerance, the level of normalization of that fear effect has been so saturated into people that they have to show quite extreme things. As a side reference, please consider things such as we don't show you dead bodies on the news. Here's a picture of a dead baby on a beach. Are you terrified yet? Are you in fear yet? Are you in horror yet? Oh, we don't show you snuff movie element. Here's a picture of a bunch of dead bodies in Iraq. Anyway, yeah. So, watched the episode, sat and thought I could take several clips out of this. Maybe I could get away with just playing the audio to make a point, because there were at least a couple of times during the show where the script from the Doctor, being, the Doctor's talky parts, make direct, relevant statements about viral infections. And this one, it's come from Hong Kong in the Doctor Who storyline. And I considered whether maybe when they were given the preamble of what the episode should be about, or the elements that it should include for the spin doctoring propaganda part, they were just told that it's going to come out of somewhere in Asia. So maybe they made that Hong Kong connection there. Maybe it's got other narrative connections to things like the protests still somewhat ongoing in Hong Kong, somewhat suppressed because of the supposed coronavirus outbreak at the moment. But there is that Asian connection and the virus coming from that. Another side note, look to the Economist cover, which made a deliberate point of the mask over China with the Chinese flag on it over the globe. Yeah, so check out Jesse's recent videos. He's covered this quite a lot, and there's a lot of other elements to the coronavirus propaganda that he's covered in his recent videos that are just more that I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't be able to squish into this particular broadcast at the same time. There's just too much stuff, such as the emblem of the laboratory company that's in Whohan and things like that. Yeah, so much more extra depth potentially, but that could all be a cookie crumb trail that has been deliberately set by the system, by the narrative writers, so that it leads people into a limited hangout conclusion or reaction and conclusion from this whole stage play that they're presenting. Before I move on, I suppose I'll do the usual caveats like I did last time. I'm not saying that the virus is not real or that people have not or are not dying, etc. I don't know yet. I don't think there's been enough evidence yet to prove it one way or the other. There may be some deaths, but those deaths could have been from other causes that the propaganda narrative has just labelled as coronavirus, so it serves the purpose of the script that they need to put out, so that they've got some dead bodies to put under the name. But they could have died from anything, as far as I know. You know, not seen any autopsy. Not, you know, they've been told they can't bury them in public cemeteries and things like that. So how would we, as the general populace, know? We're just being given these cookie crumb morsels of information, like Scooby-Doo trail, to lead us to where they want us to go, to the conclusions that they want us to assume. So, as the episode goes on, like I mentioned, there's a couple of points where they make very direct, relevant references to virus infections, how it's a danger to people, it's killing people. And there is an Asian connection in multiple ways within the storyline. One, stated directly as there's an outbreak in Hong Kong. And two, one of the main characters featured in this particular episode is an Asian woman who's presented as an alien scientist that has been working to try and find a cure to the virus. Oh, Whohan laboratory, class 4, highest level classification for dealing with bio weapons, basically, biological material, viruses and bacteria, etc. Asian scientist working to try and figure out a cure. The connections were just far beyond coincidence. There's other parts to the particular episode that further that as well. If you have the opportunity and you can be bothered to, please check it out. You know, you can, if you want to, just ignore, you know, just ignorance is strength. You can just view it as entertainment and enjoy the Doctor Who story of the inverted Doctor Who, now female, solving the problem and saving the world yet again. You know, they're connected to an environmental problem as well, because it's connected to plastic and the saturation of plastic around the globe and things like that. Climate change spin, yeah. In a way, climate change connected anyway, or environmental action connected. But the whole episode about viral infections, and it was spread by birds supposedly dropping dead out of the sky. Where else have you heard about a connection to birds dropping out of the sky in normal news, not on fictional drama shows? There is an element where this has been an occurrence ongoing for a number of years, long time, with mass deaths of various animal types, but birds in particular, birds falling out the sky or dying en masse, things like that. But in recent times, there's been a theory, I'll call it that just for the caveat's sake, there's a theory that potentially some of this could be connected to modern technology, the transmission technology, Wi-Fi, basically. So yet again, the spin doctrine within the Doctor Who writers has included the appropriation of real-world effects so that they can try and misdirect the public from any comprehension of what is causing those effects in reality, in the real world. What is causing birds en masse to fall out of the sky dead in the real world, in recent occurrences where that has been happening? Oh, don't worry about it. Doctor Who tells you and indoctrinates your children, because remember, children believe illusions quite readily. They believe what adults around them say. So if an adult tells a child complete bullshit, the child's likely to believe it. You know, Father Christmas, anyone? Indoctrinating these children, the younger generation, to think, oh, you hear a story about birds falling out of the sky. Oh, well, it's because of this alien virus infection. Oh, I'm sure the scientists like Doctor Who will figure it out for us. Doctor Who, WHO, World Health Organization, Whohan, Dr. Whohan, all these ducks swimming in the water. Now, there's more I could do about the Doctor Who thing, but there's just too much. Yeah, you could do multiple episodes just talking about Doctor Who itself and the cube elements and all that kind of stuff. But there's something else I want to show, that this now stretches it back a few weeks, but it is certainly important and relevant to what I'm trying to describe holistically of the propaganda that's been being built up into this recent pandemic effect, and potentially the main reasons why they've been doing that. You know, what they're trying to justify? What are they trying to persuade the public to go along with? I've got a screen share, Chrome tab. Right. Hopefully you can see that, because I can't see my screen share at the same time. This is the sort of back end of my YouTube channel, where you do all your things like uploading your videos and looking at analytics and whatever. And this is the comment section. Now, I put it on, or left it on, comments I haven't responded to, because I noticed in recent times that often now I will get no notification from YouTube about new comments. In the past, whenever somebody would post a comment under one of your videos or on your channel page, you'd get a little notification from YouTube. You know, the bell had highlighted in the most recent or in recent updates. Prior to that, you'd get email notifications saying so-and-so posted a comment on your video. But in recent times, in the shadow banning crackdown that they've been doing the last few months, I get 0 notifications for most of the comments that get posted on my videos. So I got into the habit of going directly to the video itself and looking at the comments under the video. But then I noticed that if I come to my channel comments section on this back end of the channel part, I find even more comments that I can't find under the videos, or I don't readily see when I go to the video page. So another layer of shadow banning that is preventing me from knowing about new comments. That's just part of the shadow banning effect. So apologies to people that I haven't replied to, because I haven't seen, I didn't know these comments were there. So apologies to JB, but they were putting a link here to this John Rappaport's page, isn't it? Yeah. Have you seen any of John Rappaport's articles about this recently? I haven't checked his site for a while, for a few months, I think. So no, I haven't. But I know he'll be doing coverage of this kind of stuff as well, because he's good at covering this kind of news manipulation. The Chinese virus is spreading deception and false news. I'm just guessing, because I haven't looked at it, that it's covering how a lot of the spread of the virus has been, or the information about the spread of the virus has been spun by the Chinese news media and the global news media, so that they can present it in a very deliberate way. And I didn't know about this comment from Gary about the ancient hole boring technique. I'll have to have a look at that at some point. I know I saw some of the posts from Bright, but again, these were often shadow banned and they don't show up under the video. I think some of them were in the spam folder as well, because Google just likes doing that kind of thing. But the reason I wanted to show you this, and there's another one that I didn't know about, is because of this. Now, this is 4 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure there was another one somewhere that might be a bit older. I thought there was another one that there it is. That's as a reply under episode 16. Under episode 17, he's posted another similar link. Now, I don't know if this is a genuine person or not. I'm not trying to cast any aspersions against them personally, but I am making objective observations of how all these ducks started to come into a line, started to line themselves up in the water. About 4 weeks ago, he posted a couple of links, episode 16, episode 17, to videos about voice-to-skull technology, or the use of mainly frequency-based technology, because it's usually done at a distance, transmission-wise, to manipulate people psychologically, to actually affect their thinking. Now, I've been aware of this kind of technology for quite a few years, and I have talked about this kind of stuff before in the past. It has been part of, the subject matters when I've been talking about things over the years. So it's not like it was something new to me. And I just sort of saw it, opened up the links, so, oh yeah, he's talking about that kind of stuff. Okay, his name is John T.I. The T.I. stands for targeted individual. It's often how people will label themselves for that kind of thing, and they talk about those kind of subjects. I don't want to assume, but I get the impression that he considers himself a targeted individual, and that's why he's interested in subjects such as the voice-to-skull technology, or the use of electronic technology to affect people's thinking. Arguably, there's evidence to show that they can do things such as implant images and emotional sensations. They can certainly affect your physical sensations. That can lead to altering your thoughts, because if you feel like you're on fire constantly, it's going to affect your thinking. And this is a subject that stretches way back to the 70s, going back decades, where people have theorized and argued and presented evidence that the governmental systems, the system, has access to this kind of technology and does use it, does implement it in certain uses. You can go back to the Navy Yard shooting and the guy with his ELF gun, the ELF, the extremely low frequencies, which are often used for this kind of technology for various reasons. They can travel further, they can pass through almost any object, things like that. So they've got a higher likelihood of reaching the target. There's various ways they can implement them. But like I was talking about with other subjects, there's a lot more to this that you can dig into if you want to. I need to keep moving on. My main point is that somebody who I've never encountered before, as far as I know, a few weeks ago, posted links to the subject matter of voice-to-skull or psychological manipulation via technology under some of my episodes. Now, some of you may have already twigged, looking at the timeline of that, and stop the screen share of that now, that not long after that, approximately a week after that, Max Egan uploaded his video. The one where he claimed the world was a pancake and that everything else he's ever said in his life, like no trees and I don't know, he mentioned a few different subjects, basically everything all piled onto one plate. The Neo element as well, he mentioned, that you are the one and that kind of stuff. Basically, if you took that video on its own, out of context to all his other stuff, you'd say this is a video somebody suffering from some kind of mental breakdown or distress. They're having some kind of episode of distress, psychological distress. as a lot of us talked about, it seems like Max has gone mental now. Look at his video. He's talking all this craziness. And it was very much that kind of, I need to unload. And I didn't really think much about it at the time. I did consider the connection between the two. There's somebody posting comments about voice-to-skull manipulation. Then Max posts a video where he claims that they implanted, a light came down and implanted ideas into his head. And I considered mentioning it on the show where I talked about that episode with Max, and we had all the, the truth flap, I called it. We had the discussion about the propaganda manipulation and agents of misdirection and things like that. And I thought about mentioning it on that episode, but I thought, it's a bit of a stretch. And it's a subject matter that I know for many people they will find difficult because it's a long subject. As I said, it's a bit like MK Ultra. There is a vast amount of information out there that you need to trawl through before you start to get even a rough picture of the whole thing. Same with the kind of voice-to-skull technology. There is a vast amount of information out there that it will take you quite a while of trawling through to get a rough grasp of what potentially could be a reality about that subject, that question. So I thought, I don't want to mention it because I'm already, I want to concentrate on the cult of personality kind of thing and all that kind of stuff. But now, with the last week's build-up of this coronavirus propaganda, then, the other elements such as the Doctor Who Whohan, I can't even say it myself now. These elements all started to make me think, I've got to include that. He's another one of those ducks. I think it is no coincidence that somebody that I've had no regular interaction with, no interaction at all as far as I can recall, they may have been in the chat room or posted other comments or something, I don't remember. But as far as I remember, that I have had no interaction with that account. They turn up and start posting links to mind manipulation stuff. Then we have a major personality figure in the alternative media acting as if he's having some kind of flip out and talking about technology implanting shit in my head, folks. The world's flat. And then the build-up of the coronavirus, the Kobe death, the Kobe Bryant character, another cookie crumb trail of conspiracy theory, limited hangout, Scooby-Doo element, pantomime theatre. So this now had me thinking, was this done deliberately to try and trigger people? To see how many people would get on board with the totally over-the-top kind of talk of, they stuck these ideas in my head. There's some guy in a room somewhere pulling levers and making me think weird shit, which is classically part of the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Check it out for yourself. You can find that kind of information online. How do you diagnose somebody with schizophrenia? They'll talk about the use of, or the confusion of fiction and reality, and how often schizophrenics will construct fantastical pseudo-reality storylines around themselves of how celebrity figures actually secretly want to be with them or send them secret messages, or God talks to them in their head. All these kind of elements of classic diagnosis of schizophrenia. Has there been a very deliberate attempt to trigger people? Because I don't think it was targeted just at me. I may have been added to a list of targets because of the fact that I've been a long-time subscriber of Max. So maybe they hoped I would jump on board and start pushing their narrative agenda. I think that's highly likely. They were trying to recruit or appropriate me and this platform to push their particular spin of the narrative, the deliberate propaganda manipulation of people's information sources. When you're looking at all this information as it's being presented to us, they wanted me to start ranting about, look what they've done to Max, they've implanted these thoughts in his head, and supposedly to feed that narrative. Now, connecting this back to Whohan, because, this week it's not meant to be all about Max again. That's still an ongoing thing, I think. We keep an eye on his output and see how, if they do, because I still have that space in my consideration that he has been used by other people, that he may not necessarily be a conscious participant in what they're doing. Yeah. So I'm not going to make any kind of absolute judgments in that respect. And I know a lot of people get pissed off because they want me to join their bandwagon and start attacking him. It's like, that just serves the purpose of what the system wants us to do, because you're then providing yet another justification of how they have to control the crazy people online because they just abuse each other and attack the public and whatever else. And that could be part of it as well. He may have been part of that charade of creating yet another division and getting different elements, different camps to fight with each other, to start accusing each other and throwing shit at each other, or constantly do. What happened recently this week, just after the Brexit? Yeah, I didn't mention the Brexit. Have you noticed any difference yet? Well, one of the differences may be the fact that just after Brexit, there was a new terrorist event in the UK, in Streatham, where a guy stabbed a couple of people. I think 2 people died from being stabbed. And the guy himself was shot dead by armed police who just conveniently happened to be there in plain clothes and had pistols in their bags. Wow, amazing. Is every 5th person down the high street undercover police officer with a pistol in their bag? How else could they have been on site so immediately to be able to gun him down and deal with the situation? Oh, he's only just been released from prison. Oh, and he was under surveillance. And oh, his name was Sudhi Sham Man. Sudhi Sham Man, just been released from prison, actively under surveillance by armed undercover police that were following him, such that once he started rampaging, they could shoot him dead fairly quickly. That means they were actively on site, physically following him, trailing him, keeping an eye on him. So did they let him out of prison so that he could go and do some stabbing, so that they could have a news story going, look, folks, terrorists, terrorists, terrorists? Just because we've had Brexit doesn't mean you should stop being afraid of all the terrorists. And what's the problem, reaction, solution, conclusion? The justification that they're trying to create with yet another terrorist event. Oh, well, we need to keep these people locked up for longer. Bojo made an announcement this afternoon that they're going to address the legislation that means that they can keep these suspects locked up longer. What does it require to be classed as a terrorist? What's the new classification that gets you labelled as a terrorist? It's something along the lines of, if you do anything that is against the state. So if you speak out against the state, it used to be called sedition. If you spoke against the monarchy and talked about bringing down the government and things like that, it'd be labelled as sedition, which is already part of the legislative structure. But now we've got this new social definition of what it means to be terrorist, or maybe I should say socially accepted. The public has acquiesced to this new definition of terrorist. A terrorist is anyone that speaks out against the status quo, because in doing so, they potentially risk bringing down the societal structures. So therefore, that's just like what a terrorist wants to do. So if you use the internet, if you use YouTube to create content where you're pointing out the bullshit of the government and you're questioning the goings on because it seems like theatre, it seems like propaganda charades that you're being presented with, and that they're trying to play with your emotions or fuck up with your thinking, you must be a terrorist then. What do we do with terrorists? Oh, we lock them up because they could be dangerous to the public. We've got to make sure we take them off the public, away from the public. We've got to make sure they can't carry on putting out information online, because if they do, They could cause other people to be radicalized, or they could infect people with their mental craziness. Because when you speak words to somebody, it's like a viral infection that gets in their head, a mimetic infection that turns them crazy. So somebody says to you, oh, yeah, Epstein didn't kill himself. You've just infected them with schizophrenia. We've got to lock you up. You're patient zero. Now you start to see how these ducks line up with the Wuhan, Dr. Whohan pandemic. Be afraid, folks. You see somebody sneezing, oh, get away from them. Isolate them, lock them up. Somebody questioning what the government's doing about this problem, how they're implementing security checks on major ports and airports and major points of travel, train stations. Oh, you're a terrorist, then we've got to lock you up as well. And this also weaves into this whole theatre presentation the connection to 5G and the rollout of that new level of technology. And then we're back to that. In this environment, the so-called truth movement, conspiracy genre, skeptic community, whatever you want to call it, environment, there is that connection via popular personality figures that if you talk about things and certain subjects in a certain way, you get labeled as mentally ill. And you should also be restricted or curtailed from putting out content or interacting with people, because you could infect them with your anti-governmental madness. Another little side note on this that I only know about because I heard some of the American commentators mention it in their uploads. Because I know over the weekend it was the Super Bowls in America on the 2nd of 2020. It was the Super Bowls. There's a lot of other number 2 connections connected with that. So it's, the number fountain in recent weeks has been just over the top. But during the Super Bowl, you had the usual mid-time entertainment show, which was just a couple of old biddies shaking their bits. I did see some of it. It's just like, okay, women dancing sexily. There's a pole dancing section in it, which is like, there you go. It's a further level of the normalization has become so over the top that they have to present things that are more and more and more extreme, because otherwise they don't get the public's attention. So as another extra note on the episode of Doctor Who, they had a gay kiss. 2 of the main characters are meant to be 2 men are married, and they kiss at the end of the show when the doctor solves the problem and gets them back together and they have a snog. Prime time, family demographic, gay kiss. Prime time, sports and many others, certainly in the American audience, they're not just necessarily sports fans because it's such a annual national event. A lot of people tune in for the Super Bowl. Mid-time entertainment, pole dancing, stripper dancing, basically. And in the advert break, several adverts to do with 5G technology and the rollout of 5G. You're starting to see the picture of what's going on in this second month of 2020. Now, I've just got to mention this before I show you one other thing, and then I'll try and finish up what I was trying to say. When they brought the evacuees back to Britain from China, the coronavirus evacuees, they brought them over to Britain, they flew them in, and they transferred them by coach from the airport to a hospital. What was the coach company? It was the White Horse Coach Company. There's a deeper connection there to the Pale Horse, Behold a Pale Horse, the White Horse Company, bringing in the infected into your society. And what just made it even more ironic in the way they're trying to portray this, all of those evacuees were dressed in protective clothing, paper suit and a mask. They all boarded the coaches The coach driver, he's just dressed normally, got his high-vis vest on, like, he works in a driving industry. He's got his high-vis vest on. He's got no mask on. He's got no protection on. So they're dealing with an immense pandemic that's so dangerous. But, get on board, folks. The driver doesn't matter. He'll be replaced soon by a 5G-driven autonomic system anyway. So it doesn't matter if he dies of the virus, does it? But I'm just going to open a door to a much deeper layer, because I know some people will be interested in some of these deeper layers to this kind of stuff. But this is potentially a massive subject area, so I'm going to try and just skip through quickly some of the connections, do another screen share. This is going back to reference the Dr. Whohan element again, because that episode was titled Praxeus. Now, it stood out to me a bit, the name Praxeus. And I thought, well, I'm sure I've seen that somewhere, or I've heard it somewhere, or whatever. Maybe I should check it, just find out, just in case, is there any other connection? Why have they given the title that particular episode that title? And lo and behold, Wikipedia has even gone to the extent of adding an extra note at the start of this page, so that other Doctor Who watchers that thought, oh, look up the name Praxeus, where's that come from? They get told not to be confused with Praxeus. That's in reference to it's a 6th episode of the 12th series. That was what was relevant about the episode numbers, the 6th episode of the 12th series. Anyway, the Praxeus, spelt with a US at the end, is the title of the Doctor Who episode. But Praxeus, spelt AS at the end, was a character from history that was part of the debate on early Christianity in the 2nd and 3rd century, 2nd month of 2020. There's a lot of twos going on at the moment, folks. But he was somebody who had a discourse with Tertullian, where they're debating about whether God is a singular being that can choose how he presents himself, as the Holy Spirit or as Jesus Christ incarnate, etc. Because you remember at that time, you've got the development of the Catholic Church and their belief in the Trinity, which is God as the three. I think Tertullian, as a theologian, is fairly influential at that time in that respect. But anyway, whereas the other elements of Christianity that was developing at the time believed in what's called monarchianism. Basically, God is a singular thing. I refer to it as monism, which is very similar. It's just not coming from a Christian theology. That's their version of basically saying the same thing. Everybody's got their own version. But another part of this that seemed really relevant, because I thought that's a bit obtuse. Why did they call it Praxeus? What's this? Where's the connection with this? Why call this Doctor Who episode about a virus from outer space this name? Wow, that's a bit of a weird, out of the blue connection in a way. But I kept reading and I kept remembering some bits as well. You got like the monarchian element, which claims that God is a singular being. You got the early Catholic element of the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then you've got this part where the name Praxeus comes from is, as I said earlier, is somebody who was debating with Tertullian. And main part of their debate was they were both anti-Montanist. Now, Montanist was somebody basically was a ecstatic prophet. And then another duck started swimming into line then when I was looking through this stuff yesterday. Now, I've read through all of this, but try and summarize it, because it's really worth reading if you are interested in this kind of layer of what's going on here with narrative construction, because it's quite important and relevant, but it's certainly meant to be very subtle, subliminal, subconscious, because the Montanists were people who used to travel around mostly. They did at one point have a particular site. They managed to acquire a small church, I think, off the Catholic Church. But anyway, they would travel around and profess the new prophecy, the new revelations from the one true God via ecstatic revelation. Think of the kind of, like the snake biter Christianity. I can't remember the actual proper name of the denomination off the top of my head now, but that kind of speaking in tongues, the revealing of God's truth, or speaking for God, allowing God to speak through you while you are in a state of ecstasy. So in other words, a higher state of consciousness, because that's what a lot of these kind of faith systems are based on, like Sufism and other ecstatic-based faith systems. They rely on that sublimation of your own self to allow the greater self to speak through you. What does that sound like? Does it sound very similar to somebody on YouTube talking about signs and portents that they read in the world that is presented to them by the scrying ball of the internet, and professing the word of God based on that prophetic interpretation, that ecstatic revelation? Does it sound a lot like characters, Mockingbird characters, like the classic Jonesy, yeah? And there's many other personality figures, again, reference I was talking about earlier. And in this argument with Praxis and Tertullian, they are debating whether Montanism is heretical and should be excluded from the canons of Catholicism, certainly, but they were trying to push it out of Christianity completely. And remember, this is 2nd, 3rd century, so it's proto-Christianity. Orthodox Christianity was just starting to split off and develop, and you had the Catholic Church developing, and you had a lot of these other smaller subgroups, smaller little enclaves that go off and do their own thing. And from one of them comes the Nag Hammadi scripts, which are often used to further concepts such as the Christ consciousness and life beyond death, and various other elements that are quite relevant at the moment when compared to the virtual environment of the virtualized ego self and the system trying to persuade people that that virtual existence, that fake ego self phantom, is where they really live rather than the actual real world. As I said, it's a much deeper subliminal subconscious layer that they're trying to address. But this is exactly what the BBC does, and in particular via that Vanguard primetime show, Doctor Who. I know some people are bored or fed up with me banging on about stuff like that, but this is vitally important in terms of demonstrating how the media is used to create, spin, and further push propaganda carrying particular narratives, particular scripts that are very much engineered for deliberate reasons. For people like myself here in this environment, a few weeks ago, they decided to initiate a sequence, a project that was meant to trigger a lot of people into following a cookie crumb trail where they would make false associations between certain technology and what it can and can't be used for and how it's being implemented, such as, just as one final screen share, if you didn't see this come up, notice this a few days ago, 27th of January 2020, Congress now funding controversial geoengineering Plan B to spray particles in the sky to cool Earth. You still gonna constantly bang on about chemtards? And this is not the first time they have made official announcements about doing research about funding geoengineering and the use of particulate spraying and other frequency technology-based systems to influence or affect the weather. This as well is connected to the Internet of Things and the 5G rollout. So all these things are starting to come together now. They needed a bunch of people in this environment on YouTube to start, YouTube in particular, but the internet in general, the gravy train circus of the so-called alternative media, to lay out a cookie crumb trail to lead people into a limited hangout where they start professing, having ecstatic revelations of how things are being implanted in their heads such that they can be easily labeled schizophrenic. They could then be sectioned or arrested or certainly taken out of the public interactive sphere because they're dangerous folks. They're causing people to get mentally ill and they're spreading disinformation and blah, blah, blah. And also terrorism, because if you present any good, genuine information about what's being done by the state systems, then they can label you as a terrorist because you're potentially rocking their foundations. You are bringing down the status quo. So now, under the new definition, terrorist. So we can take you away as well and keep you locked up because everybody's afraid of the terrorists, and the terrorists bring viruses, and those viruses are so racist. Why are they only infecting Chinese people? That's not fair. We need diversity. Hashtag viral lives matter. Hashtag me coronavirus too. Yeah, that virus is so racist. That was another layer to this that I thought I'll leave out because it really is part of the circus silliness. But anyway, I think I have ejaculated. I think I have reached conclusion. As I said at the beginning, the quick synopsis is that this is yet again a demonstration of media being used to create, enable, push, and further a propaganda narrative that serves a justification of implementation of agendas and legislation that they now want to have in nearly every nation around the globe. It's part of the New World Order global infrastructure system that they want to set up. A viral pandemic, I can say a viral pandemic, such that they are portraying it as being, is the perfect justification for control of the movement of information, because they've got to make sure you're not spreading disinformation that can virally infect people and make them scared. Movement of information and the movement of people, because you've got to make sure that the ill ones are quarantined and not infecting more people. It can curtail global travel and trade. Yeah, it was announced yesterday and today, certainly I saw reports on it again, of the Chinese stock market taking massive hits because of the curtailing of trade and travel and stuff like that. At the same time, under the guise of controlling population because of a pandemic risk, that makes perfect cover to have a infrastructure of control imposed on your population while you start a war. Netanyahu was visiting Putin now. Remember I mentioned the other week he was over visiting Trump, and Trump announced his new super duper peace plan, which is absolutely meaningless. Abbas recently, a few days ago, made a direct statement saying they're now disassociating all contact with Israel and the US because this supposed peace plan is just so ridiculous. It's utter bullshit. It's just another deliberate method where they present what they know is totally unacceptable to the Palestinian people, such that the Palestinian people are guaranteed to refuse it. So therefore, they can go, oh, well, we made you an offer. Now you didn't accept it. So we'll just carry on what we're doing, building illegal settlements and pushing into your territory and then going, oh, look, the map now says Israel. Tough shit. Bye. They can quite readily start a war in the Middle East at the moment. And because of the pandemic risk, the population will be more readily controlled because the infrastructure will already be in place, as well as the automatic social self-policing of people being afraid of each other because they might sneeze, and all that equals death. All good timing in this second month of 2020. Remember as well, the logistical time required to produce a television show, to write, script, produce, edit, output that television show. That episode of Doctor Who was not written last week. It was not made last week. The same as Jeff C covered on his show, a recent serialization on Netflix called Epidemic, I think, or Epidemic, which is the same thing. They couldn't have made that yesterday. That's been in the pipeline for quite a while. So it's been timed, the release of it has been timed deliberately to coincide with all this other stuff. Welcome to your biometric future. Remember to wash your hands. Right, I think I'm ranted enough. Sorry guys, I know it's a bit over the hour, but as you probably saw, there's like an immense amount of stuff that could be thrown in there.
Sure is.
I found it really interesting as well that if you really dig away at that theological connection to that episode, the Praxis title and where that takes you, that quite cemented it for me that this is about creating a reaction in the public such that they want to curtail people such as ourselves who talk about certain subjects or question certain things, such that we risk destabilizing the illusion. Yeah, you got to keep believing the illusion, otherwise it all falls apart. Fiddling Nero.
There's a lot there, and it's hard to add to it. You've covered a lot of ground there, Cookie. Just think we need to look at the role of the Pirbright Institute and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Would
see
they?
what they're up to with their patents and their pandemic simulations.
I was going to say, I was just going to ask you, Pirbright, that's the ones that own the patent, isn't it? Or that's the company name that owns the patent? Sure
is. The fact that Whohan is the epicenter for both the biotech lab and the 5G rollout, that's got to start raising some eyebrows. For me, the big picture is it's the road to mandatory vaccines. That will either or both attack the immune system and help facilitate through the Internet of Bodies the transmission of 5G and through neural lace technology, etc., to connect us all to the artificial general intelligence hive mind. And if you tie in the fact that the control system are attempting to equate an alternative view with psychosis, and the cities are under lockdown, that just spells it out.
Million people in China on lockdown.
You can see that the freedom of movement and speech is coming to an end altogether. They want total control over your digital, physical, and carbon footprint as we sleepwalk into the next stage of humanity's evolution, or degradation, rather. I think this is why China has been used as well as a blueprint for where they want to take the West.
With that Economist cover for 2020, it's I mean, we've talked about 2020 vision, and this is the year people will see properly. No, they're going to make sure you can't see properly by making the writing smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah, they're going to get everybody seeing things the way they want them to be seen. And on the immune system thing you talk about, I mean, we've looked up things that disrupt the endocrine system. We say, oh, this can, this can masculinize people, or this can feminize people because it will mess up the endocrine system. But all of those toxic chemicals, including 5G, the one thing we've not focused on so much is can affect the immune system, can suppress the immune system. It comes up in all of them.
Yeah, and it interrupts the cell communication, or potentially causes interruption or interference in cell communication. So the simplest way I can think to describe it is in your endocrine system, it's slowing down. It's like your endocrine system is put into slow motion because of that interference effect. So people's bodies are not reacting the way they should do to fight those general infections. So more people get general little niggly illnesses and shit like that.
Right. And it's a weird inversion, because as communication between people is getting more and more quick, faster and faster and faster, communication within the body is being disrupted. From one cell to another. Your brain knows that you're sick, but it can't tell your liver to start producing a particular kind of chemical to fight the disease because the communications are getting disrupted. Yeah. So another thing with this, I mean, people have been talking about how can frequencies damage you? Well, look at the bright frequencies. Whatever disease or problem you might have, there is a kind of vibration that can help cure that. Well, there's one that can cause it as well. And you think these people haven't been covering that? Well, I mean, I just did a search on right frequencies now, looking for a list of frequencies that I'd seen a year ago on 5 or 6 different pages. They're all down. I've got to search through Google to about the 3rd or 4th page till I can find what I was looking for. Now as to the frequencies, go on. Yeah.
Well, I just want to throw this in for the people that often have a difficulty with this kind of subject matter, because they've been told by the media constantly that there's no danger, there's nothing wrong with this technology, etc., all that kind of stuff. The WHO, there they are again, the WHO, the doctors, the Doctor Who's, have classified the use of the high-end Wi-Fi technology like 3G plus 4G, certainly, as a class 2B carcinogenic. That, if you read their own definitions, class 2B means probably causes cancer but needs more research as confirmation. Now, a lot of the debunking sites will say that, oh, that means there is no proof then. So no, it probably means there is some proof, but they want more proof and confirmation. And if you bother to put in the time and effort to go and look for the information, you will find there is quite a lot of scientific papers that cover this question and add evidence to that argument that us being oversaturated with all these frequencies is a carcinogenic. And it adds into, I would argue, that same connection in terms of the endocrine system, the immune system, and people's difficulty with their general well-being because of the interference of all the EMS smog. And then we're back to Whohan and Whohan 5G connection. Yeah,
and they knew about that in 2018. This one I just put up. Towards 5G communication systems, April 2018. Are there health implications? And they've been saying the RF, radio frequency, EMF promote oxidative stress. So the other thing, when people say, oh, you're talking about frequencies and that, that's all, that's all bullshit. Well, listen, you know why they say, I mean, not so long ago, I was sharing videos on cymatics, and if you put a pure note, like do, you'll form a pattern. That's healthy. Now, don't use your thumb, because your thumb has a pulse. But use your 4 fingers, put them on your chest, and just try that. Oh, that's New Age, that's Indian bullshit. No, not if you're hitting that do note. If you're hitting that do, you can literally sing yourself back to health, because you're recreating that pattern of health within yourself. Yeah, it works as simple as that. Yeah, so even if you get confused with the right frequencies, just remember the note 432, the do note. That is the healthy one. Look at the frequencies that create nice patterns because they're fixed, they're stable, they're healthy. That's what it's all about. It's about order, and at the other end of the thing, you get things breaking apart, chaos. Yeah, and that's what they cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the use of those frequencies to generate chaos in people, like that kind of voice to skull technology, it can be used just to cause chaos. You know, if they can't refine something to the point where they can get a voice to appear in somebody's head, because they can do that. That's been shown again and again. Yeah, they can make people think they're hearing voices, but even if they don't do that kind of level of thing, they can just activate a frequency against people to disrupt their general thinking. So you feel a bit confused, bemused, lost your recent memory, you know, you don't remember why you walked into this room. Effects very similar to Alzheimer's or dementia can be implemented by very simplistic frequency technology. Certainly 5G would enable them to do things like that. So they can keep the public stupefied, basically. And one caveat I want to make here at this point as well, because again, I want to make sure that people aren't misled into that cookie crumb trail that takes them to some deliberately created limited hangout fucking paddocks. There's some people out there you know, that have been pushed and pushed and pushed in the alternative media as being supposed experts on the subject when they are obvious propagandists. You know, if you've heard the name Mark Steele, please go and check out Annie Logical channel and look at all the evidence and all the arguments she's put together to demonstrate how that guy is creating exactly that kind of cookie crumb trail to try and lead people into a bad idea, a bad comprehension of the technology, such that they can be pantomimed and ridiculed. Because when people start running down the street shouting, "The 5G's made my nose bleed," then they will be ridiculed by the general public, even though there is an element of truth in the propaganda that they push. They take it, they spin it, they push it to an extreme, and then they get people to repeat the extreme so that the general populace just dismisses the subject, because all they hear, as far as they're concerned, is crazy people talking craziness. Yeah?
Or you've got these agents of division like Paul Joseph Watson that want you to come away with the idea that it's all these smelly Chinese people that are fucking eating bats. That's it's all their fault, you know.
You ever seen what's in a sausage, PJW? Yeah. Paul Josephine Gimpson. You ever been in a meat factory and seen what goes in a sausage? Or a hot dog? You know, you like living in America and you love professing how you like that American culture so much. Go and have a look at what they put in a hot dog, mate.
The thing about that, I noticed that with the bats and the snakes, in the Chinese market. Well, you got to remember, like when they came out of communism and became a capitalist country, which was bullshit. They just let the people have a bit more freedom. Those kind of markets were the one kind of black market area that they kind of had to give to the people. Yeah. Oh, look, you know, we are talking about a communist dictatorship. You can take your money and go down the market and buy your old traditional foods. It's that kind of market they want to close down now, because that doesn't fit in with social credit and cameras and GMO and control.
And mass food production, the control of the entire food infrastructure. Those kind of what are really like traditional marketplaces. They're marketplaces that just happen by natural, spontaneous order because there are people congregating in an area, so others see that as an opportunity to sell them something. It's like, look, there's a crowd of people over there. I'll set up my little stall and sell them fried locust on a stick.
Yeah, that's probably where you get the medicines as well. That'll be where you get the traditional medicines as well. Yeah.
So
if they want total control of your freedom of movement, freedom of speech, your physical footprint and all that, they can't have places like that.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be on the virtual cash connection either. Probably a lot of them will be, you know, normal cash in hand kind of exchange, not internet traced virtual cash.
Yeah, and when they have a situation like this, whether they're faking it or just exaggerating it, well, they have a to-do list, you know, and these private markets are one of them. You know, get the people to expect transportation close downs, get the people to accept towns being quarantined, you know, because what's going to happen? What they've seen in Hong Kong, yeah, what happens if one of the Chinese cities decides to do the same thing? They've got to quarantine it. Oh, we've got a virus outbreak over here. You know, close it all down, keep it quiet.
Well, if this continues, because this is why at the moment I still want to be agnostic in making any kind of conclusion on whether it's genuine or fake or hoaxed or whatever, because I don't think there's been enough time yet to see how this develops and if it does actually continue. Because if it does continue, then that increases the probability that there is a genuine element to it, that there is some kind of illness that's killing people, etc. Yeah, but that kind of thing is already happening in China. There are villages, towns, and cities now where they are voluntarily self-quarantining. Not necessarily the people within the village, town, or city, but the others that are around them are quarantining those that they are concerned about. So they are self-policing to build that kind of restrictive quarantine setup, yeah? So if this situation continues on and the media keeps pushing the fear porn propaganda, because that's what the mainstream media has been doing with this virus, yeah, then you're going to see that kind of thing happening in other countries, especially once deaths start happening in other countries. There's so far only been one I've seen reported in the Philippines. But if people start dying in other countries, then you're going to start seeing that reaction in the public where they will demand that the government come in and quarantine certain areas that the public's worried about.
Yeah, well, that feeds into what Daz just said about blaming foreigners and all the rest of it. They just want people to distrust each other.
They did it in...
So you start with the foreigners and then you get out, oh, but it might not just be the foreigners, it might be your neighbour as well. Better wear a mask, you know?
I think it was France, one of the refugee camps. People were trying to leave the refugee camp. It might be the one that I think they call Moria. I'm sure I saw a report earlier. Refugees wanting to leave the Moria refugee camp, but the locals and the authority was basically trying to quarantine them in there. And there was another one which I think might have been from Spain, but I can't remember the details properly. But they isolated a whole load of people on an old holiday camp. Yeah, so the effect is rolling out, even if it is being done for propaganda reasons and to get people to acquiesce to an environment where there is that constant threat. You know, they've overplayed the terrorist threat such that now it doesn't have the reaction they need from the public to then pass their legislation or whatever. So they're bringing in a new threat that you can't even see. You know, the guy in Streatham, they could see him with his knife attacking people. The virus, you can't see it, can you? It's the ultimate danger.
It goes back to that sort of panopticon system, constant surveillance, self-policing.
Yeah. The thing about Pavlovian dogs, you can't tell whether the experiments worked until you put down an empty dish and blow the whistle. You know, yeah. So you know, it's also an experiment in obedience of people.
Yeah.
That again brings me back to the potential connection of somebody posting links to Voice to Skulltech just before Max has his breakdown and says, "Oh, they put ideas in my head, folks." I mean, I can't say I'm more inclined to the possibility that this has been simply done by characters in the internet environment, but there is that possibility. You know, it may not necessarily be connected to the agencies, the governments, whatever. It could be just a bunch of fucktards online that are trying to mess with people as they like to try and gaslight us constantly, you know, all that usual kind of shit. Could be. The
Just like,
coincidental timing of those two to me says, now this is an agendized thing that's going on.
Just like your carbon footprint as well, you're a cancer on the earth that requires the beneficent guidance of your technocratic masters to provide global solutions.
Yeah, don't worry, old Billy Bob Gates has got an injection for you. Just don't look at his hooves. You know, just ignore the fact that he's a goat from the waist down. Yeah, that's sarcasm, folks. I'm just being silly. You know, I can't say I've ever actually seen his feet though. So you never know. He might have goat legs and hooves. But it's just that name connection for me has always stood out. You know, Billy Goat Gates. He's there at the gateway to usher in or to bring you through the portal into their new age, etc., etc.
Gates of
The
Hades.
windows. Yeah. Billy Bob Gates gives you windows. Step through the window. Who will you be today? What world will you inhabit today? Anyway.
Money. Bill Gates.
Yeah. Charging you an entrance fee as you step through that gateway. Yeah. Remember when they were prosecuted for pushing Windows and Internet Explorer and all that lot? Yeah. That was definitely him standing there at the gate charging you an entrance fee. You want to get through, you got to pay. Is your name on the list?
I mean, you know, Bill's a bad one by the way he walks. His gates.
Billy Goat Gate. Yeah, he's got that Billy Goat Gate. Yeah.
Just thinking about this Super Bowl shit. It's basically Crowley's doctrine. That's it, to expose the young to all sorts of.
The age of Horus. And we are in the year 2020, the year of vision. What does Horus represent? He's that eyeball. He's that vision. That is his superpower. Yeah, he's got the eye. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is a liar, but he says he's got an eye.
Yeah, I haven't had time to watch that yet. I'm not sure if I will. I did see a couple of good films the other week. Riff Raff by Ken Loach and Sorry We Missed You about a guy. And Riff Raff is good. Oh, I saw Navigators as well. 3 films by him. And they really do document like the absolute destruction of industry and job protection and safety on the railways, and then the building. And then this other guy, he's got like a job driving for a company, but he's self-employed. That's how they get you to pay you for the van. That's how they pay you peanuts, yeah, by giving you the job as a franchise. And this guy literally drives himself mad, you know, trying to drive the van for 14 hours a day to, you know, support his wife and children. But, oh, man, what a bleak film it is, yeah? That's why I prefer him to Mike Leigh, because Mike Leigh was as the working class coming through chipper. And what you said about Mike Leigh is true, man. The agenda, because when I went back and watched the one about the Marxist and his girlfriend, you know, who was a delivery man back in the 70s. You know the one I mean, though, yeah? They visit the grave of Karl Marx. And you know that it's all fake because the best characters in the Mike Leigh ones are the ones who actually managed to climb up to that middle class.
Yeah. They're following the ladder. They're accepting the illusion, the matrix illusion, and they want to actually climb the ladder.
Yeah, whereas Ken Loach, he depicts the working class exactly as they are. Yeah, and the problems that they're facing, and you know, the implementation of the government, you know, poverty. Yeah, so much better Ken Loach, who also came out against Palestine, which is probably why his films aren't quite as advertised as Mike Leigh. It's easy to mix the two up, yeah, which is what they want to do, yeah. They do that often.
Let me have a quick scroll through the chat room. I'm sorry, folks. I haven't been really looking at the chat room at all because I had so much to try and get in to say that I thought I won't let myself get distracted, so I just let it flow. And I know the guys are in the chat as well, so I thought there's no harm in just letting it do its thing, and I'll come back and say hello to everyone in a bit. Alan Vicar, hello. Thanks for tuning in, right? I can't scroll all the way back to the beginning. Oh, So if you were here earlier in the chat and I miss you, sorry, it's just I can't scroll my chat all the way back. New being, hello. Cardini, hello. And Cheris Rosin, hello. Hate mobiles, my fingertips don't fit the keys. Me as well. I end up doing one finger typing. If I try using my thumbs, I get like 4 letters at a time because I've got big thumbs. I've got bass player thumbs. That's what my thumbs were made for, slapping a bass string. And Bright, hello Bright. Bright 77 and Eman Pudama, hello. Charismatics. Yeah, it's another one of those sort of Christian side branches, isn't it? Charismatic Christianity. Bit like evangelism, you know, the being the charismatic proselytizer. But there's more to it than that in the theology of it. I'm scrolling, that's Gary. Said hello to you lot. Lots some Tatro, hello, mate.
I put a link in the comments earlier on for little fluffy clouds, because New Being asked the exact same question. What were the clouds like when you was little? So I go for that song. That's the exact line from the song, yeah?
Yeah, little fluffy clouds.
I was wondering though whether the first person to come down with this virus was a little old lady, and she could feel the virus wriggling and tiggling inside her, yeah? Because you know, the thing with the bat eating a snake, eating a... Jesus, man. I mean,
that's a good point, man. It is quite similar. I mean, I did dig it out the other night and sat and watched it again, the film Contagion. I couldn't be bothered watching Outbreak again because I've seen it so many times over the years. I'm fed up of looking at Dustin Hoffman's sweaty face. But I watched Contagion again, and the script as it plays out in that movie is so uncannily like what's been happening over the last couple of weeks. It's like, have they just taken the script and like changed the names? That's all they've done, really.
Sorry. I was just going to ask if you've ever listened to the audiobook of World War Z.
Not the audiobook, no. I've seen the movie.
I haven't seen the film, but the audiobook's tremendous.
I know this is going to sound a bit whatever, but another element that connected, or in a way connected for me, whatever, just say it and then we can laugh about it afterwards. From the Contagion movie, who's one of the big stars in the Contagion movie? Gwyneth Paltrow. What did Gwyneth Paltrow release not so long ago? This candle stinks of my fanny. Is her fanny infectious? Did she create a viral meme online because the stock sold out overnight and everybody was talking about Gwyneth's stinky fanny candle? Do you see the connections over the last couple of months have been just over the top? But yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to release an anus candle. I mean, why not? If she can release a fanny candle, why not? What Tom Hanks? You know, this candle stinks of my bumhole.
Oh, Jesus. You could make little ones with children's birthday cakes.
Well, it appealed to the gay demographic. You know, I'm sure Doctor Who fans would buy it.
You know the guy lifting the veil, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, he makes really long videos where the guy is still a reductionist but can't see it, but he is good at spotting patterns. Yeah. But anyway, he put one up the other day. It was a compilation of other people's stuff. So most of it you can watch without having to listen to his voice, which can drone on. It actually put me to sleep the other day. I listened to the next one that he was doing about something or other, Kobe Bryant. Yeah, and I was reading emails at the same time. Now, honestly, his video put me to sleep while I was reading my emails. Yeah, but this other one doesn't have him speaking so much. It's about this latest fad that like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, all meat diet, carnivore diet. And it's incredible what these people put themselves through. Yeah, they eat raw meat, and after about 4 or 5 days, Joe Rogan in his show has said, I can't trust my butthole anymore. I'm too scared to fart. Yeah, because these people are getting terrible diarrhea from eating just meat. Yeah, and then this, I mean, they show this thread where the guru of only eating meat is answering questions. This woman, what do I do about fart breath? I mean, they've got these fucking. I mean, it happens so many of them. Yeah, they've got these you know, phrases. You know, they've got these off the cuff phrases like disaster pants and fart breath. And then, Jesus Christ.
An interesting synchronicity with that is the only word, or one of the only words you can get out of coronavirus as an anagram is carnivorous. Right?
Raccoon.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, this shows, because the Jordan Petersons and Joe Rogans, they're all on the right. They spend all their time slagging off the left, including the vegans. Yeah. And so how do? They don't say, well, I think I'm right to eat, fruit, veg, and meat. No, they are reactionary. They let themselves be pushed off of common sense, and they say, oh, well, we're going to eat just meat. I mean, it's the polar thing, isn't it? Polarizing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that it was a reaction to this veganuary, like vegan January, like the whole reason why Rogan and that were going on to the carnivore diet. Bang on.
So
I didn't know that bit. Good point.
I missed this comment earlier, but that's a big part of the connection. Yeah, Congress now funding the controversial geoengineering plan to spray particles in the sky to cool Earth. Yeah, and as we've long been talking about for many, many years now, we're back to the 90s when people have done tests on residue and in the environment around where they think chemtrails have been sprayed, they find a lot of heavy metals. And I know I've talked about this part of the topic many times in the past, and whether part of the agenda was because they want to encourage dementia in the population by causing the effects that heavy metals in the body causes, which is the erosion of brain tissue, which leads to dementia and Alzheimer's, or whether it's part of the attenuation of the human body to add it into the Internet of Things. So like you were saying, Dave, the Internet of Bodies. If we're carrying more metallic heavy metals in particular in our body, then we're more susceptible to that frequency technology because we are acting like an aerial. We are attenuating the signal because we can pick it up more readily, basically.
Yeah. And what can stop?
Thanks, Terence.
What can stop sunlight by reflecting it away will reflect back down all the 5G. Yeah.
And the aluminium as well. Yeah.
Aluminium, barium, and strontium.
Yeah. And when you look at the evidence about the aluminium saturation in agricultural land, such that the crops can't grow properly unless they get Monsanto'd, so they have to have the Monsanto Terminator crops to cope with the level of aluminium in the soil.
Well, there is one plus on that side, and that is that it used to be Monsanto, but now it's Bayer. So Bayer is not only making the glyphosate that will give you cancer, they also make the chemotherapy drugs as well. So, at least you can get everything from one company. Yeah.
Convenience.
Good point. Mascara snake, hello. I've just managed to scroll all the way down to the chat room now. So, he's put in some of the statistics over the flu deaths. 65 or 650,000 die every year from flu. That's globally, isn't it? 500,000 globally each year die from influenza or influenza-related problems. So the last reports I saw earlier today, it was just over 300. The total number of deaths as well. Remember, this is the information coming from the Chinese government, from their official reports, 300 plus, which when you compare it to the numbers that they claim were infected, that is a really low fatality rate. It's nothing compared to seasonal influenza, seasonal flu. So this again is, it adds to the argument that a lot of what we've been presented with in the media is deliberate hyping up of the fear factor. That's not to say that it isn't real or that people aren't infected, but they really, really want the public to be scared of this infection. Yeah?
There was a
Even
report
though-
somewhere that said that the UK had sold out of surgical masks.
I haven't seen that one. I've heard them talking about the mass sale, people going to the chemist to buy them and whatever. You might as well buy yourself a bottle of Forsythia, like in the movie Contagion. I've got a bottle. This is my version. This is called Pupisia.
I haven't checked up on it yet, but I mean, I've got a little bit of tea tree oil. So if it comes to the fact where you've got to wear a mask, you're going to want to put something on it that is antiviral, maybe tea tree oil. But you're not supposed to take it internally, eat it. But there are remedies for getting rid of colds and coughs by breathing it in. So I'm not sure, but it's just an idea. I've ordered, I've got some baobab powder today, that I'm going to use instead of whatchamacallit, sugar. Yeah, and that's supposed to be helping the immune system, along with ginger and what else was it? Garlic, ginger, garlic, anything. There are lots of things that do help boost the immune system. Worth giving them a look, yeah.
Nicotine, hello. Thanks for joining.
Because again, like you said, if they've got these frequencies out now and they are, really zapping people's immune systems, and people start getting sick, they'll blame it on a virus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the potentiality of what's going on here, that possibly there is no virus at all, and the sick people are just suffering from some kind of seasonal flu effect or something like that, because that is a corona-based virus, isn't it? The common cold is a coronavirus. But instead, what's actually happening is people are getting sick from the saturation effect of the technology, the 5G, and the governments are just calling it this pandemic so that they can then implement the justification for the control of the people. Possibly. It's one of the possibilities.
It occurred to me the other day as well. I've seen videos that say that people have like the hats that are shaped like this, like just the top, They used to wear them. They was wearing those on the Medici series I was watching the other day. Hats like this. But that's actually eucalyptus seed pod, and that's the inside of one when you take the top off.
Aren't eucalyptus mildly hallucinogenic?
I don't know, man, but I'll tell you something.
They're certainly euphoric. That's why koala bears are generally quite tame and placid, because the consumption of the leaves en masse gives them a euphoric effect. I call them the original peoples. The original peoples of Australia claim that they have a kind of hallucinogenic effect.
Well, I picked one of these up because I had one in my pocket for about 2 years, and after 2 years, you can just get your thumbnail, scratch the seed pod, and still smell eucalyptus. It's strong as fuck, man, and that smell doesn't go away after 2 years. It's incredible. I love it. Nice smell.
And Stewie, hello. Thanks for joining in.
I was going to ask about Mark Basho. He's just started a live stream because he hasn't put a video up in ages. He's putting up a live stream now. He's with Vinny Eastwood. He's on the Vinny Eastwood show.
Hopefully he puts Vinny in his place a bit, because Vinny will just try and make a joke out of everything, and Passio is not the kind of person to just sit there and be comedy.
Well, I'm interested in Mark Pasho now because I'm absolutely certain, like the last really good video he did was his presentation that he did at the other Anarcho Pulco. And now this Anarcho's Pulco is coming up. Mark Pasho is not listed, but Ron Paul is listed. And I think, a lot of the anarcho-capitalists are trying to all join like a sub-branch of Republicans. And that is what made Mark Pasho so
libertarian.
Angry. And that's what made him so angry and pissed off. So I was wondering what he's doing about that.
It's more happening in America, and it's certainly be part of the build-up to the 2020 elections, right? So, they have been trying to appropriate a lot of the online activity and put it under the libertarian heading, so that in effect they can recruit more people and fill out their ranks or make it seem like they've got more support than they really have, because they are trying to link a lot of the anarchist culture and rhetoric that gets put out on the internet and say, oh, that's libertarian. Oh, that's libertarian. So you're one of us. You're one of us.
They did
More
that.
than likely just to do with the election.
They must be losing a lot of numbers with this woke ideology.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that in the last election. About a third of the fucking truther movement just shifted over to Trump. Yeah,
That was, I think that was deliberate, man.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
I said that right from the beginning. Trump appropriated the conspiracy genre.
And it happened to coincide with a lot of the monetization as well, which meant, well, they won't let you monetize, but come over to Steam, come over here. And yeah, like that girl that jumped up, can't remember her name, Tara Goldface or something, yeah? I mean, she like had 50,000 subs overnight, shifted over to Steam, and she still had about 20,000, you know, the petty bonus and that. So,
oh, yeah. Now I remember what you mean, yeah.
I think a lot of this liberal stuff is intentional to get, see, like as Jim Dawson puts it, like to shift everybody over to the right a wee bit, you know.
Yeah. It's all bollocks. Hello.
It reminds me of what Trump was saying to the African American community. Look, we're gonna fuck you off, yeah, but we're just big companies that are making money. That's all we are. And you work for big companies, so vote for us. Whereas if you vote for the Democrats, they want that fucking communist, fucking Marxist federal government with its fingers in everything. Yeah. So, that's the best you can hope for. Yeah, the crony capitalism, and get in with a good company. Otherwise, it's the Marxist fucking dictatorship. Jesus.
Apple Charlotte, hello. Cannabis-based life form, the artist formerly known as, hello. You just reminded me as well, there's one other element that I'll add into the discussion as it's been, me talking about the propaganda narrative kind of stuff and whatever. And I mentioned recently about how coronavirus, it's got that etymological connection to corona, the crown, but corona doesn't just imply crown, it also implies that ring of the sun, the surface of the sun, and in particular the fiery ring that you see during a full solar eclipse. Suspicious Observers covered, I think it was either today or last night, a new study about how the sun has potentially lost a part of its corona, and they're doing the scientific research and development to show how that happened and what might have happened and whatever. So another interesting synchronistic element connected to that crown corona effect now at the end of January, beginning of February, etc. Yeah? I wondered if it might have been a kind of Brexit connection. I still think there is something there about the recent transition. We're transitioning, folks. We're trans-Britain. We used to be trans-Europe. Now we're trans-Britain. The transition of the Brexit and the decline and the degradation of the royal family. And I've argued before, I've suggested before, this is a deliberate combination. They're getting the public ready for the kind of technocratic structure where people like the royal family will not be in a position of power anymore. They will just be like celebrities. They are already, and they're going to slowly go more into the background. That bloodline elite doesn't need it to be in the public anymore, thanks to modern technology. In the past, before the advent of things like mass communication via telephone or telegraph or whatever, they had to make occasional public appearances so that their populace, their subjects, knew who they were, and you create that commanding respect kind of bullshit dogma to justify your position of authority and blah, blah, blah. As technology has developed, they've moved further and further into the realm of celebrity culture. Before, say, 100 years ago, the appearance of the royal family was treated with such deference it was if a demigod had stepped in front of the public. You know, people were expected, and there was a social norm of having that level of deference. Even if you didn't like that particular king or queen, you still had a very sort of expected level of decorum of how you interact and all that kind of shit, you know, patriotic kind of stuff. Whereas now, it's all about that public image as portrayed by primarily the visual media. So you get the latest photographs of whatever, you know, the royal family members and stuff like that. That's a Philip dick pic. Here's the royal family member portrait for this week.
I don't think these people have got any real authority anyway. I think the very fact that we know about them, either they're in the public eye at all, it's just, for me, the real power operates from the shadows. Like, they're too much.
Exactly. That's why I think they want to, in this new technocratic structure that they're trying to cement, you will never see that ruling class anymore. They will live in a completely different world to the rest of us, and our only interaction with even the concept of them will be like the E-Christ in THX1138. We will interact with a virtualized hologram, an interactive, software-driven picture of the ruling chancellor or prime minister or whatever label they stick on it. But it will not be the actual person that is behind the scenes pulling the lever. That class wants to go further into the shadows. Yeah,
but there's always plenty of people who want to be the Bill Gates man. Yeah, Bill Gates,
Elon Musk,
Bill Gates keeper.
Yeah,
man.
But I mean, you know, they're relative, like the ones we're talking about. You know, they've got stories from their great grandparents saying, "Oh, when the French Revolution happened, fucking keep in the background, mate. Don't go out there and try and be a politician, or don't let your ego fucking put you in the spotlight." You know,
just like those ones, just like those ones who didn't get on the planes on 9/11.
Talking about France, we're not hearing a lot about France in the news these days, are we?
Yeah. Oh yeah, firefighters fighting cops, and they were using water cannon on. Like they used the water cannons on Saturday. I don't know if they used them against the firefighters. That was last week, wasn't it? So basically, they're telling the firefighters, "Hey, look, we've got our own fire engines."
They were using
yellow vests.
This was a bit that I thought indicated a bit of pantomime or deliberate, you know, photo op optics, because they used smoke grenades against the firemen. And they specified saying smoke grenades, not tear gas. Now, a fireman is trained to operate in a smoke-filled environment. So in other words, throwing smoke grenades at a bunch of protesting firemen was completely and utterly pointless, because those guys know how to operate in a smoke-filled environment. Well, if they'd said they threw tear gas at them, I could understand, like, you know, oh yeah, the typical French police being over the top, oppressive, blah blah blah. But no, smoke grenades is what? Were they all having a laugh or something? It's like, yeah, let's go out on the streets, guys. You go down that end of the street. We'll be up this. We'll meet in the middle. We'll have a bit of a ruck. You know, we'll make it look good for the cameras.
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I mean, they were complaining about the pensions as well. So not only do you have the yellow jackets complaining about the fueling crisis, the fuel price increases, but you've also got the pensioners moaning, and now they're trying to do away with one of the very last nationalised sort of organisations, yeah. Which, don't forget as well, French Rail. They were on there. It's a fucking mess, isn't it, France? They were on strike when they threw over Christmas. They came down for Christmas, I think, French Rail, yeah, SNCF. So yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know, because they've been the pensioners have been marching in Spain as well, yeah. So what the hell? And what interested me about that was it was the IMF came out and told the Spanish government, "Oh, you can't afford to put the pensions up." So I mean, when did the fucking IMF become? They're not even the EU Council. They're the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or the European Central Bank. When did they become the authority that everybody? Well, since if you look at their shareholdings, you know, you'll find people living in Switzerland behind the bank. They're the ones that are reaping the rewards, and they're the invisible people that he was talking about. Yeah, they hide behind these huge banks, but they have the voice of authority. Yeah, and governments know.
The BIS, the Bank of International Settlements.
There you go.
Hardly anybody in the public has ever even heard of them, and yet they're like this world central bank.
Portugal.
Anyway, I'm going to wind it up. Just say hello to a few more people I spotted come in the chats. Steve Tagoose, hello, mate. Thanks for joining in. And James Owen, the chat room ninja, he's in there again towards the end of the chat room again. Hello, mate. Thanks for joining us. And I'm sure I saw another name. I'm scrolling. Apologies if I miss you, but I'm trying to scroll through quickly. Tazzy, hello. I knew I'd seen another name in there. And I can't scroll all the way back to the start. So, Paula B, hello. Hope you're feeling well. Thanks for joining. And I'm going to wrap it up at that, folks. We've done just over a couple of hours. And please don't feel inundated. I know I put a hell of a lot of information all together and dumped it all on you like a big unload. Yeah. But if you're interested in it, just take your time. Main thing is keep an eye on what's going on in the media. Don't believe everything, because a lot of it is just hype and propaganda. Well, that doesn't mean that not necessarily truths in there that you need to be aware of. And in terms of if you're worried about the virus and things like that, just take a few sensible precautions. Wash your hands. I know it sounds ridiculous having to tell people these days, to wash your hands, but yeah, simple precautions. Don't believe the hype, and keep an eye out for the crazy propaganda in this internet environment. I think it's going to keep amplifying, especially here on YouTube, as they're pulling in the fences and closing down a lot of the people that are on this platform. You're going to see it get more and more and more. And some people might just be shut down without any big woomph or announcement or whatever. Yeah. But we've got the internet still at the moment, so we'll keep making use of it while we can. Get something good out of it while you can. And take care, folks. We'll see you again soon. I'm not sure if we'll have reality chat tomorrow night. I haven't heard from Peter yet. I don't know if he's got his internet set up again yet, because please don't forget he was moving home. So, how chaotic that can be. If there is, you'll see it come up on the YouTube feed. And as far as I know, Steve should be on Thursday night again with the mystery show. And we'll be back again next Monday, hopefully, with episode 23. Let's see what goes on for number 23. Take care, folks. Thanks for joining in, guys. One love. Oh, click the button. Yeah.